Yeah. So hello, Keyfest. Thank you for joining us. I'm John Tinkelenberg with Casa, and we're going to be talking about node applications. Obviously, we know nodes is the, I guess, metaphorically speaking, the nervous system of Bitcoin, if you will. There's probably an engineer out there that would have a problem with that. But the narrative has changed over the years to where it's used to be we would use these nodes to keep the network alive. And now the network has grown and grown. And so that use case is still the case, but there's more opportunity out there. And so I'm very pleased to be joined today by Lamar Wilson and Matt Hill. Lamar, you know, from Black Bitcoin Billionaires and just being a man of the people. And then Matt Hill as the CEO of Start9 Labs, taking that plug and play node, moving into the personal server space and beyond, driving the next phase of the internet. And so I want to start with you, Lamar, if you could tell me a little bit about yourselves and how you got into Bitcoin nodes.
Yeah, so my name is Lamar Wilson. Again, thank you, John. I am the founder of Black Bitcoin Billionaire along with Isaiah Jackson, Bitcoin Zay, he's known as on Twitter. But yeah, I started with Bitcoin nodes a little bit back in the day. In my first foray into it, I ran a Bitcoin node from Bitcoin Core when I first got in, and then really started trying to do some mining when I first jumped on the Bitcoin network. So I've been around these nodes for a while, and I'm very interested in peer-to-peer applications. So that's my first foray into Bitcoin nodes.
Wonderful. And Matt, if you could tell us about yourself.
Sure. It's a broad topic, so I'll try to stay as close to the Bitcoin node angle as possible. When I first got involved in Bitcoin, I did so because of the underlying ideology and principles and how they aligned with my libertarian ideology. And, I believe that technology is a force for good and a force for evil. And so I absolutely identified Bitcoin as a source for good and wanted to get involved and wanted to push the boundary as much as I could. As a developer, I was in a unique position for that. And then over the years, gradually found my way further and further into decentralized technology, more broadly speaking, with Bitcoin kind of being the optimal example, but ultimately realized that if we don't decentralize computing technology in general, then Bitcoin itself is going to suffer a poor fate. So that's what I set out to do along with some partners, and that's what I do.
Awesome. And so in both of your views, why should we continue to run a node today when we could just connect to an Electrum server or just work off of some third party? Is decentralization the only incentive?
I think it's decentralization, and then also the fact that actually running a node gives you power. Like the empowerment from Bitcoin comes from the fact that you get to choose whatever software you want to run, the fact that you can choose whatever wallet you want to run. You can write your own wallet. You can write your own implementation of Bitcoin and participate in the network. And that participation actually adds value. And that's what's so beautiful. Like you adding value to the network allows the network to add value back to you. So I think it's very important that we begin to continue to run nodes. And it gives you just a certain level of control and sovereignty that not running a node will not allow you to have.
So, there's sort of three tiers of digital sovereignty. You have trust, and then you have trust but verify, and then you have don't trust, verify. And, in various scenarios, there's probably a place for all three of those. For instance, if I were running a Bitcoin node and my wife or child or close family member or friend wanted to use my node from a wallet that allowed you to plug in a backend node, they trust me and I would be willing to do that. And I don't see a huge security vulnerability there because that trust is established, but trust can only be built from the ground up in that manner. And so, maybe it is okay there. Step two would be for, them to, check my work, to run their own node and connect to my node and gradually move towards greater and greater sovereignty. So, ultimately, if you want to be able to verify transactions and you want to be able to guarantee that you can't be censored from participating in the network. You need to run your own node, but there are acceptable middle grounds where close networks of trusted individuals can, Uncle Jim it for each other, bootstrap off of each other's infrastructure.
I like Uncle Jim.
Uncle Jim's a good guy.
He goes with Cousin Earl.
Cousin Earl. You just make that up?
Perfect. And for most of my life, and I think for a lot of people here, we've watched computing become more and more centralized over time. For the most part, I grew up in the age of cloud computing. And when it first came around, the big pitch was redundancy, that you didn't have to worry about backup anymore. And so when you move into this, when you start running a node and when you start running a personal server, to what extent do you give up that redundancy, or are there some practices that you could take on to that next level?
Well, I mean, it all comes down to responsibility. The more free you want to be, the more responsible you have to be as well. And that responsibility now lies on you to create a redundant system. And some people will say, well, man, I don't want to do that. Well, think about it. There is a cost to freedom. You just have to ask yourself, how free do you want to be? How sovereign do you actually want to be? And I think that's okay. I think a lot of these things that we're moving towards decentralization are going to change the paradigm for many people, for them to understand that you can't rely on somebody else to take care of you anymore. You're going to have to grow your own network, grow your own food, the whole nine, right? So I think that is a very important thing that you have to understand when you're going for the plight of freedom.
I agree 100%. Freedom requires independence. If you are dependent on someone, then they can withhold. They have leverage over you. So, independence requires responsibility, and it requires you taking responsibility for your own life, and that is hard to do in many circumstances, right? So you mentioned redundancy specifically. Is it easy to run your own server and create redundant, secure backups in geographically dispersed locations? Absolutely not. It's very hard to do, and it's why people don't do it. It's why the centralized, convenient cloud infrastructure that we observe today exists in the first place. It's because doing it yourself is hard. And so, I and others and many in the Bitcoin world are pushing to lower the barrier, the technical barrier to entry for the self-hosting, whether it's a Bitcoin node or a peer-to-peer messaging node, whatever it is. It's never been easy to do. And if we ever want decentralized, self-sovereign computing to not necessarily overtake, but even compete with the current custodial centralized model, we have to compete on user experience. That is the battleground, without compromise, right? User experience without compromise on the security and sovereignty independence front. So it's harder for sure now, but it's easier today than it was a year ago.
Thanks to Start9
and others, but yeah,
I'm a plug you. You don't have to.
Okay.
And so thinking about that user experience without compromise, obviously one of those battlegrounds has been communication. And we witnessed it this week with, a wave of Bitcoiners moving from Twitter to Getter. And so we obviously want to see this new age of decentralized social media and encrypted communications take off. How can nodes assist us in that journey?
So to comment on the Twitter to Getter, migration, it's not unsimilar to other migrations that we've seen in the past, where people are migrating from one centralized custodial system to another centralized custodial system, expecting something to be different. And while it might be different for a short period of time, ultimately you're going to run into the exact same problem and then repeat and repeat and repeat. It's sort of like waking up one morning with a horrible hangover from pounding too much whiskey the night before, and then being like, man, I'm not doing that again. Tonight I'm drinking vodka, and not realizing that the underlying problem is the fact that you're drinking your ass off at night. So, centralized systems are going to do what centralized systems do, which is that they're going to ultimately abuse their power and squeeze every drop of profit that they can out of it. And that's their job, quite frankly, right? It's not like I'm looking at them saying, you evil people. I'm looking at them saying there's a better way. And that better way just needs to step up its game and be more competitive.
Yeah, I think it all boils down to being in power, which is what centralized systems are. They are in power over you, and being empowered, right? Empowered. And that's what decentralized systems allow you to become, is empowered, because now you have a voice, you can participate, and no one can stop you from pushing whatever it is you want to say, whatever message you want to send into a network that is connected in that manner. So yeah, I think the Getter, Twitter, I don't know, there's probably a billion of them that keep popping up to try to take on Twitter. I think, again, it doesn't matter because they're still the same. They might not censor you on one thing, but I'm sure at some point somebody might give them a tap on the shoulder and tell them they need to censor you on something else. So as long as that's going on, you are not really going to be empowered to do exactly what you want and have the free speech that you really want to have. So yeah, decentralization is very key in that regard.
Indeed. And taking it back to Bitcoin and kind of how it all started. I think for me, I've run a couple of nodes over the years. I've done it the hard way and the easy way. And I know for me, it really helped me become more orange pilled because it takes Bitcoin into the visual realm to where you can see things that you can only read about otherwise. And for the two of you, how has running a node and experimenting with them, how's that changed you as a Bitcoiner?
I mean, when you running a node on the command line and then you start seeing those logs come up and you run it in a verbose way, it's really cool because you get to watch the blocks come in, then propagate transactions. Like, you get to see everything that's happening in the node, and it's really, really cool. And especially if you're running a miner as well and watching that, it's like all of that together makes you start feeling like you're a part of it. It's almost like you're Neo and you stepped out and you can see the matrix for what it is. You know what I'm saying? It's really cool stuff. So running a node will get you more in tune with how Bitcoin actually works. And for a lot of people, that is necessary for them to understand the difference between Bitcoin and many of the other, blockchain applications that are out here, or blockchain implementations that are out here that are not necessarily blockchains. I think last night we had a conversation with Peter Schiff, and I think he finally came to the realization that Bitcoin is a lot different than everything else. It finally hit him. Hopefully he sticks with it. But I think that's the thing. Running a node will help you get closer to understanding why it's different and why it's better.
That's like a moment in history. You're saying last night Peter Schiff got it?
Yeah, listen, man. he was like, "Are you telling me Bitcoin's different than all the rest, and everybody else buying these other ones are pretty stupid?" And all the Bitcoiners yelled out, "Yes!" Like, that's literally what happened. But
I still think Peter Schiff's a troll.
Well, if Peter Schiff is starting to get it, then I think we might be on the moon now.
We might be close.
So look, as Lamar said, running a node gives you, there's an emotion attached to it, a sense of belonging and participation, a sense of self-esteem, even like an I did it kind of a moment. We get that a lot in our channels of people when they finally get set up and they're like, I did it. It's this rite of passage. And there's something else too, and it's very personal. It's very private. The way that I have described to people often about how I feel, not only when running a Bitcoin node, but when running anything that is self-hosted and contained and under my sovereign control, and it's private and it's censorship resistant, that feeling of like, totally, I'm the master of this software system. It's a feeling of like almost being a child and having like some secret, box full of all your trinkets that you keep under the bed, something that you cherish and that is precious to you, and that you think your parents don't know about, and they probably do, but they're going to let you have it anyway. It's just like this, it's yours in a very intimate, meaningful way. And that's the feeling of property and power and empowerment, as Lamar said, that feeling of I'm powerful. And it really does. It comes along with it. Now, the more convenient you make it, right? Ultimately, if just literally closing your eyes and pushing a button means you're running a Bitcoin node and you can't see it and you can't interact with it and you can't do anything, then a lot of that feeling goes away, right? Ultimately, you're still doing the same thing, but you don't get the feeling. And so, a lot of the ways that are some of our design principles, and not just that, but experience principles as well, is that the user, I'm talking about Start9 and our product offering right now, is that when you're running a Bitcoin node, we facilitate the setup process so that it's a button, but then from then on, it's like a transparent window. Like you still get to see those logs. You still get to execute command line actions if you want to. And so you still get that feeling of like control and intimacy and propriety, but it's easier, right? We're just facilitating the process.
Perfect. And Lamar, I understand that Black Bitcoin Billionaires has done some node running projects of its own. Could you describe what are y'all working on right now?
Yeah, first of all, I gotta give a shout out to PlebNet, the PlebNet that has been run by I think D++, that's a whole lot of people, which is what's dope because there's a lot of people doing it. They have a subnet of the Lightning Network called the PlebNet. And what we have done at the Black Bitcoin Billionaires is started to try to build our own subnet that is the Black Bitcoin Billionaire subnet of the Lightning Network as well. And so some of our members are already going out buying nodes. I'm sure some of them have Start9s. The Start9 can run, C Lightning, LND. And I don't want to get too crazy on like names and stuff, but they are running the Get Umbral, right? And it's really cool because things are starting to step up to a point where the UX UI is something that everyday people can run. And I love that. And shout out to Start9 for some of that stuff. I'm going to keep dropping his name. If y'all don't go pick up a Start9, he's not doing it. I am. Go get you a Start9 box. But I think that's what we're doing in Black Bitcoin Billionaire because our whole thing is about education and teaching people. And what better way than to get people to set up nodes, right? Like, that not only gets them from the financial standpoint, we talk about a lot in our rooms, but now they can get down into the technicals as well and be a more well-rounded Bitcoiner so they can get from becoming, move up in the ranks as far as being a yellow belt up to the black belt level. You know what I mean? So I think that's what we're doing at Black Bitcoin Billionaire.
Awesome. And Matt, if you could walk us through the Start9 vision a little bit for the embassy, because it's not just a Bitcoin node. There's so much more that you can do with it, and it's going to lead to much more of a decentralized future.
Yeah, I mean, look, Bitcoin is a rabbit hole for itself, okay? People talk a lot about the Bitcoin rabbit hole. But Bitcoin is actually a gateway as well to a broader concept of self-sovereignty and decentralization as a basic principle of engineering. And Bitcoin, it's not like what we're doing is a novel concept, right? The idea of running your own server and self-hosting open source software that connects over P2P or federated networks, or maybe doesn't network at all and it's just for your own internal use, is not a new idea. In fact, it's how the internet started. That was how people did it originally. It's the only way there was. But, making that the basis of Earth's computing infrastructure, right? You can imagine sort of two different futures unfolding here. And one is where, more and more computing and information systems, information technology is funneling through less and less numbers of people and entities. And we, under that scenario, would expect nothing but more of the same, except bigger and worse, which is censorship, extortion, surveillance, suppression of rights, you name it. Basically handing over data and communications infrastructure to a small group of people is like handing the world over on a silver platter. It is probably, in my opinion, the greatest existential threat to humanity is centralization of communications infrastructure because of the way in which it can be abused and will be abused. And so the only alternative to that is decentralized communications infrastructure. And again, it's always been possible. but it's always been difficult. And one thing that was lacking in decentralized communications infrastructure was what Bitcoin filled, which was finance, money, right? As long as money was centrally controlled and centrally distributed and communicated, a decentralized communication infrastructure was still sort of benign, toothless, right? You couldn't really move society over to that until you had a way of facilitating payments, because that's the grease of society, is money. So now that we have Bitcoin, not only have we solved that key component, but Bitcoin is inspirational, right? It really inspires people. It's magic, right? It's magic internet money that works, that has real technology underneath it. And so now that Bitcoin exists, suddenly it becomes possible to fulfill the original vision of the internet. And it's going to be a long road to do that. But ultimately, that is our goal, is to create a new internet. It's a very bold thing to say, but one, it's necessary, and two, somebody's got to do it, and three, we have the technology. So it's just a matter of doing it and having the confidence that you can, and building a team that is willing to. And so that's our goal. And with a decentralized internet, and I'm talking true decentralization down to hardware, right? I'm talking about mesh networks built from the ground up, brick by brick, neighborhood by neighborhood, town by town. It's going to take a long time. But the starting point of that exists today, which is an operating system that facilitates the discovery, installation, configuration, and ongoing maintenance of self-hosted software. That's what was needed. Sorry, that was a lot.
Oh my gosh. Can we give this dude a round of applause? Like, that's a vision, bro. That is an amazing vision. I'm sorry, John. I just got a little bit of hype on the inside. I had to put my computer down so I can clap my hands. You know what I'm saying?
That's all right. You're saying what I'm feeling. If we think about kind of the present moment as a lens to view that future, what are some of the most exciting applications that you're finding out there in the node space, or that you've run yourself?
So for me, I like Sphinx Chat, because it seems like a lot of people are leaning towards communication. I saw an application I haven't used yet called Cups. You familiar with that, Matt? Like the cup.
We built Cups.
Is Matt still there?
Yeah, can you see me?
Pause, everybody pause?
No, I can hear you just
Did
fine.
I pause?
Might be on your end, Lamar. I can hear him. Oh,
Did you guys pause or did I pause?
Is he cut off? Are you cut off, Lamar? Can you hear me?
That was so crazy. YouTube paused and I was talking, and then that was nuts. I was like, oh, what happened? So I don't know. Oh, they said they can hear me, so maybe you two guys paused. That was weird.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, but I was saying, do you know the application called Cups, Matt?
We built it.
Oh, you built that? I didn't.
That's our application.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is, it seems like these, because I just saw it. That's what I was saying. I just saw it because it's Start 9. So I didn't know you guys were the ones that built it. So Cups, Sphinx Chat, it seems like everybody's leaning towards communication from a messaging standpoint. And I think those are very exciting. I think we're going to wind up seeing more applications built because, like I was saying, the Lightning Network, and I said this to you guys yesterday, like the Lightning Network to me incentivizes people to actually be running nodes, because that's the biggest issue with peer-to-peer applications. If you don't have an incentive to run them, people won't run the nodes when they're not at home, right? They'll turn them off. So my whole thing is like, if we understand that now we have a foundational architecture to be able to build our, I said this again, infrastructure to build things on top of, I think the best apps are yet to come. I think messaging is always dope. Like, it's something that even when the initial internet came about, messaging was like one of those initial things, right? You have telnet type stuff, and then you start doing all the like email, like that stuff is very early, and I think that's awesome. But I think the sky is the limit to what's going to be built on top of these types of systems when everybody has their own nodes. And to be honest, my favorite thing that I think is going to come is we're going to really see the actual metaverse happen in a decentralized way, because people will have their own servers to build their own worlds. that then we can travel over light to get to their worlds. So we basically create Star Trek and Star Wars because now we're traveling over light to go from server to server, and those servers are the worlds, man. That's what I believe we're going to be able to get to. So that's my thing. The metaverse being centralized is ridiculous. That's not the metaverse. That's a silo. That's a video game. You know what I'm saying?
Nice vision. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason why we called it the embassy. Sort of, from a conceptual standpoint, it's sovereign territory in another's land. In this case, the public land of the internet. It's your sovereign territory that can then communicate with other embassies using ambassadors. And you can take this metaphor to absurd lengths. But anyway, that's why we called it that. So look, today, we poll our audience, our users and customers, right? We have no way of actually knowing what people run on their embassies. That's kind of the point, right? We have absolutely no insight into what somebody does with their device. So we have to just ask them. And what was the response is that the most popular service that we offer on Embassy is actually not Bitcoin, shockingly. It was the first thing that we offered. And it's arguably, the sort of the base, the cornerstone of everything. But Bitwarden was actually the most used service on Embassy, and that is password management, self-hosted password management, right? It's a way for you to navigate the internet and autofill usernames and passwords without having to remember all your passwords. I mean, it's a password manager, but the difference between that and something like LastPass or OnePass, where you pay a monthly subscription or use their free tier, is that the passwords are in your custody. They're your passwords. They're in your custody on a box in your home that you can access through a browser extension using Firefox, Tor browser, whatever, and autofill usernames and passwords over Tor. So it's anonymous, it's encrypted, it's an extremely powerful application that requires zero third-party trust. So Bitwarden is huge. Another fan favorite that's actually growing in popularity now, more and more because the centralized systems are betraying trust, is Matrix, which is a self-hosted federated chat protocol, messaging protocol. It basically is Slack. It looks like Slack. It feels like Slack. It has all the functionality of Slack. The difference is that there's no Slack. You are self-hosting your own server, federating with other servers on the network, just like your Bitcoin node talks to other Bitcoin nodes on the network. And it's doing it all over Tor, end-to-end encrypted, onion routed, totally private, totally anonymous. You can join groups. You can share pictures. You can share videos. You can use emojis. It's a very, very powerful chat protocol and application that is a one button support on Embassy. So Bitwarden, Matrix, obviously the Bitcoin stack. So Bitcoin full nodes, Lightning implementations. Embassy offers both LND and C Lightning. You can run one or the other or both. You could literally have two Lightning nodes running on the same box if you want against the same Bitcoin node. We have many people who do that just to compare the two. What else? That's probably the most popular. Lamar had mentioned Cups. Cups was a sandbox thing that we threw together. If your goal is to DM somebody, like there's no groups, there's no group chats, no nothing like that. If your goal is to have a one-on-one private conversation with someone on the other side of the world in a totally secure, private, anonymous, not anonymous, obviously you're talking to somebody, I guess it could be anonymous, but Cups is arguably the best way that has ever existed to do that. The problem is that it's not featureful at all. It is basic stuff. There's no special features. It's like you and I are going to engage in a DM, and that's it. And that's part of what makes it so secure, is because it's not trying to do a lot of special things. There's not a lot of opportunity for vulnerabilities. It's just a basic chat application. And there's a few others, obviously, but
I think we're going to use Cups at our next Illuminati meeting. So when we have the Illuminati meeting and I have to speak to Barack and Donald Trump, I think I'm going to use Cups next time at that Illuminati meeting. So
give it a shout out for sure.
I'm going to give you guys a shout out for sure. I'm going to tell them, like, I know the dude that made this, Barack. You know what I mean?
I didn't make it. So Cups was written by Aidan McClelland. He's the architect of that. One of my partners and co-founders of Start9. But anyway, look, as Lamar had mentioned, we really don't know what is the future holds for these types of systems, because quite frankly, they've never existed in a way that incentivized development, right? So for the past few decades, people who are developing open source, self-hosted software have almost no incentive other than ideology and reputation to develop those systems. As in other words, you have passionate, poor starving artist type developers building these systems for both reputation and ideology. And now that we have a platform like Bitcoin, where you can potentially through higher layers monetize these peer-to-peer and federated networks, like selling bandwidth to your neighbors for internet access, or renting storage space by the bit to random people around the world who you don't know. These things, these financially based applications that allow you to make money, even running a Lightning routing node. Not easy, but if you know what you're doing, you might be able to pull in a few sats, right? Not only that, but a distribution platform for these open source self-hosted services like Embassy OS, right? Previously, if you wrote one of these software services and you wanted people around the world to use it, how did they do that? They said, oh, that's a cool note-taking app that you wrote. How do I use it? They would say, well, go to the README, get a VPS on DigitalOcean, hop on the command line, install it, build it, but remember to add these build flags and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, you're done, right? So in other words, people who built open source self-hostable software had no real means of distributing it to the masses. They were limited to hobbyists and technical people. A distribution platform like Embassy OS, an operating system that facilitates that process, brings open source self-hosted software to the masses. It unleashes decades of potential energy. And then combined with Bitcoin and Lightning Network and monetization, we're going to unleash the floodgates here. So I'm excited for what the next couple of decades hold, because I think we're going to crush the centralized systems.
One of the things that makes it so dope for me too, Matt, is that we're going to move from just humans controlling those systems to us actually having robots and other Internet of Things devices contributing to that same network, right? And I always used to, back in the day, I always used to use this example of there's a drone that's like looking at a salt repository, and it's noticing that the repository is getting low. So it sends a signal out to a miner that's in the Lake Erie or something, that starts mining the salt because it's connected, and it immediately just pays the miner. So the miner gets paid and starts up and mines the salt, and then another drone comes and picks it up and drops it back off, like how much salt it needed. Like those kind of things don't even need an accountant, right? At that point. And I think those are servers as well. So now we can connect to all of them. Man, it's just, I don't know, brother. Like, I love the whole peer-to-peer space. And I think that like people like yourself and people who are pushing that forward, we're going to see so many applications that change the way we even think about interacting with robots, change the way that we even think about interacting with other services. I think that's just going to be really, 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 really cool, man. So yeah, I'm so thank you, Casa, for giving us an opportunity to speak about this today. Like, real talk, it's fun.
Oh, our pleasure. And so I'm getting ready to open up for Q&A, but while I'm giving the audience a chance to drop their questions in, how has node running and building applications on top of these nodes, how has that influenced your knowledge of the Lightning Network, and how have you come to interact with it over the years?
I mean, for me, it was the PlebNet playground. PlebNet has a playground implementation set up so you can run Bitcoin and, of course, run on top of that Lightning on top of that playground. And they have a great wiki you can get set up so you can connect right in and start playing around. For me, Lightning was something that I didn't pick up immediately. I've been in the game for a while, built wallets, the whole nine, understand how to run nodes, understand how that works. But I never really fooled around with Lightning because at first I didn't really believe in it. Like, to be all the way honest, I was like, okay, you're going to take a bunch of these payment channels and connect them. Is it really going to work? And the more I started seeing PlebNet fooling around, I said, well, let me go get in it. And running those nodes, running, the actual Bitcoin node again, and then putting Lightning on top actually helped me to understand how Lightning worked a lot better. And I think that's what it does. Like, the more you dig into something and learn it from the base layer, the more you understand what you can do on top of it. And I think that foundation of running the node and running application, me trying to build stuff for it before I got sick, really got me excited about what the future holds for the technology.
Yeah, I mean, I have been forced, and I'm happy about it, to learn a lot about Lightning and how it works. And I'm not an expert. Keegan McClelland is one of my partners at Start9. So luckily, I have somebody who I can really lean on for the more advanced questions that we get asked. But we are a de facto information desk for thousands of people who are attempting to learn Lightning and run a Lightning node and on one of our devices, and they'll come in and they'll start asking a bunch of questions. How does it work? And well, you got to know how to answer them. So sometimes teaching, explaining is the best way to learn. So not only me, but all of our support staff, and we have an incredible support team who are very active in the public channels, always there, ready to help. We do know quite a bit about it, and it's out of necessity. It's because it's our business, right? It's our business to know. So yeah.
Perfect. That's actually a good segue into the first question off of our Q&A. And I've thought about this with the base layer as well, just having sats on a regular node. Is it really the best practice, especially if running a Lightning node with hotkeys, to combine so many different services and protocols onto a single device and create multiple security attack vectors?
Yeah, that's a good question. So this comes up a lot. I'm not sure where this got planted, but it did spread pretty quickly. That kind of combining multiple software services onto the same physical metal is inherently bad practice. And that's not true. It can be if you're not doing it right? If you're not properly containerizing these services and they have ways of accessing each other, then it's possible that a vulnerability in one could lead to access to the entire system. But that doesn't happen if it's architected properly. So on Embassy OS, it is perfectly safe to run multiple services, Bitcoin, Lightning, and non-Bitcoin Lightning services all on the same box. Now, there is a non-software consideration here, which is that just putting all your eggs in one basket, right? If all your private keys from Bitcoin to your chat applications are on one box, and that box gets stolen, and you haven't been making backups, which you should do, right? That's why backups are important. Or there's a flood or a fire, then it's all gone, right? But if you have two boxes, and maybe they're in different houses, so that if there's a fire in one, well, then you only lost your Bitcoin stuff. But again, if you're running it on a system like Embassy OS that is designed specifically to mitigate these vulnerabilities, and two, you are properly making backups and being diligent about password management and not leaking your passwords, then there is no inherent vulnerability or threat to running things on the same box. However, you could run into performance and bandwidth issues as well. Bandwidth would happen even if you had two boxes on the same network, but you could run into like CPU and RAM performance issues if you're trying to run too many things in parallel. So for people who want to separate these concerns for rational or irrational reasons or personal reasons or just geographic redundancy, whatever it is, there's nothing that requires you to run multiple things on one box. Embassy OS is entirely unopinionated. It comes with absolutely nothing installed on it, nothing. So you can get one Embassy that's running Bitcoin and Lightning and another Embassy that's only running your password management and matrix server. Unlike other systems, it doesn't come with anything pre-installed. Bitcoin is not built into the operating system. It's just another service.
Hey, I was going to say, make sure everything's sandboxed correctly, which is what Matt basically says. Like, it's funny because we use several applications on all of our computers every day. Like, that is just, it's weird to me that someone's saying that, and you just have to make sure that stuff is sandboxed away from each other and only allow for certain ports to be open, so to speak, or certain services to be open to communicate with others. But again, that takes for you to be responsible. And that's what freedom is. Like, if you want to be free and you want to be like, get in there and learn, like, right? Get in there and grow your own food. Like I always say, go grow your own food, man. Mm-hmm. You don't have to worry about it.
Next question I got is, Can the panel please give the clearest possible explanation of how to use a hardware wallet with a node? For example, Spectre desktop with a ledger, and how it could be used with an existing wallet.
I had never heard of Spectre Desktop, so I'll leave that to Matt, maybe.
Yeah, I can comment on that. So Spectre is a wallet that requires you, not just allows for, but requires you to use a node behind it. It does not, they don't host their own node like most wallets. Now, it could be your node, it could be your friend's node, but you're going to have RPC credentials to add it in. So that's not really the heart of the question. The heart of the question was more about how to use hardware wallets with something like Spectre, right? So Spectre, again, verbiage is so important here. Like, there's a lot of confusion in the greater Bitcoin space because so many people are using the word wallet in different ways. Okay. You have hardware wallet and you have a software wallet and you have a node that has a wallet in it. And it just creates a lot of confusion. And so we personally really try to refer to hardware wallets, Trezors and ledgers as signers. Okay. Hardware signers, key, or key vaults or something. Like, they're not wallets. All right. They are secure storage for private keys that have certain design principles that protect those keys from leaking and have the ability to sign things. So the question is really specific to Spectre, which is a wallet. Okay, so wallets sit in between nodes and signers. So nodes are the deepest part of the stack, right? It's what's behind everything. It's what's storing the data. It's what's connecting over the peer-to-peer network. And then you have the wallet is what sits in the middle, and the wallet needs a node to talk to behind it. And it's what, displays all your transactions, allows you to construct transactions, allows you to generate new addresses, et cetera. It's using the node for propagation of transactions, for broadcasting, for detection of new transactions, et cetera. But the wallet is what's manipulating all of the public keys, generating addresses, visualizing transactions that the node tells it about, et cetera. The signer is where the private keys live. And so how you connect the signer to the wallet is pretty standardized across most wallets that support this. So in most cases, whether it's the Trezor desktop app, I think it's called Trezor Live, Trezor Suite. And then you have Ledger Live, which is Ledger's version of that desktop app. You also have web applications that will allow you to use a hardware signer. Spectre desktop is a desktop application that enables this. Sparrow wallet also allows you to use hardware signers, and the interfaces are all pretty similar, which is that you select, I want to use my hardware. I think they still call them wallets, hardware wallet, and then it'll say plug it in. You plug it in, and then it detects it, and you move forward. So I would encourage whoever wrote this question to go look at the documentation for Spectre wallet specifically on how to hook it up with a hardware signer. It's not really a question about the node. The node is very different. Or let me say, how to use a hardware wallet with a node. Oh, he did ask about a node.
Yeah, I guess my question is...
I see. Okay, hold on. Sorry. I understand the slight misunderstanding that might be coming through in this question. So some of what I just said is probably a little irrelevant. You do not use a hardware signer with a node. That's not how it works. You don't plug in a hardware signer to a node. You use a hardware signer with a wallet, and then you plug the wallet into a node. The wallet is the middleman between the node and the hardware signer. So there is no way, at least not a recommended way, to plug the hardware wallet directly into the node unless you are using the built-in Bitcoin Core wallet in your node, which again is not recommended in almost every case.
And I was going to say, great job, Spectre developers, for putting that question in so we can talk about it for 15 minutes. Awesome job. That's how you do guerrilla marketing, everyone. Make sure you ask a very good question.
Very good. Very good.
So the next question is a little bit more on the hardware side. So given the current chip shortage and the price of Raspberry Pis doubling, how will this impact the node developing business?
Oh, it does. Oh, yeah. When there started to emerge a Raspberry Pi shortage in the middle of last year, luckily we are fairly well connected in our supply chains, and we were able to get ahead of it and build inventory and make sure that we had access. So we are not struggling right now for access to Raspberry Pis. I shouldn't say that. We are struggling, but we have what we need, and we have those supply chains locked down. However, it did give us a jolt, right? We always knew that we were not going to remain reliant on the Raspberry Pi. That's just not a good way to build a business, is to make your software really only work well on one hardware platform. But the shortage expedited our efforts in that direction. So as of the next release of Embassy OS, it will be able to run on almost any ARM-based hardware platform, such as like the Rock Pro 64. Embassy OS will run just fine on that. So we are, days, weeks away from having a version of Embassy OS that runs on any ARM-based platform. And in the very near future, following this release, we will be creating binaries that compile to x86. So you'll be able to run Embassy OS on almost any hardware platform, including, I see another question further down, your old Windows machine, or an Intel NUC, or whatever it is. So Embassy OS will be able to run on almost any hardware platform you can imagine.
Perfect. And so another question I see here that the asker said, would you recommend Umbrel for running a node? Another way of looking at it would be how do Umbrel and Start9 and some of the other plug and play solutions differ?
Okay, well, that's a rabbit hole of a question. And quite frankly, one that we get asked a lot, and also one that I'm not sure is appropriate for this venue, given that I have a biased opinion.
Yeah.
I will say this: run a full node. Okay, all of these product offerings and softwares are fine. Okay, you want to run my node BTC. Ronin Dojo is a particular favorite of mine. If you appreciate the Samurai stack, that's a good one. Umbrel, great product. My node BTC. Whatever else I'm missing, Nodal, I think Nodal. It's fine. Do whichever one you want. If your goal is to run a full Bitcoin node, you could use your MacBook and go to the command line and run a full Bitcoin node. So we don't really have a dog in the fight in terms of getting more nodes into the world, right? However, all of these things are different, primarily in their architecture, more so than even the end user experience, okay? So at a glance, things like Umbrel and Embassy, which is our product, or even MyNode BTC, kind of look similar. They have nice graphical interfaces that allow you to click apps, is what Umbrel calls them. We call them services. And it all kind of feels the same. And so here's the difference. The way that these things are built are dramatically different, okay? It's like looking at two cars that look identical, and then you pop the hood and there's nothing similar, okay? We are nothing like Umbrel under the hood. Yes, we leverage Docker. Yes, they leverage Docker, and that's about the extent of the similarities, is that we happen to share a single piece of underlying technology. These differences in architecture are meaningful from a reliability, security, and most importantly, scalability standpoint. So I would encourage people to do their own research. There are also significant user experience differences. A couple off the top of my head that might be of interest to people is backups. Umbrel does not offer any form of creating backups other than your Lightning node. So your Lightning node has automatic cloud backups to Umbrel servers, encrypted, so it's secure, encrypted automatic cloud backups to their servers for your Lightning node. Start9 does not do automatic encrypted backups to our own server. You create your own encrypted backups on a local computer or thumb drive or whatever you want. But you can also back up everything else. So your password manager, your chat applications, your file servers, whatever it is, you can create backups of that. Creating backups on Umbrel's system is a matter of SSHing in, using the command line, doing Docker exec, getting into the containers, and creating these very technical, high-tech manual backups, which, again, nobody's going to do, which means nobody's going to create backups, which means people are going to lose their data. So I'll stop there because I actually have like a big list, and we will be we get asked this question so often that I'm actually finally going to sit down and compile the like compare and contrast as objectively as humanly possible for me to do, and have it peer reviewed by members of the communities such that it can be sort of verified as being an objective compare and contrast so that people can make an informed decision, because there are important differences.
That brings up oh, sorry. There's a little bit of an echo. Let me see. There we go. So your comments just brought up a good question in my mind. So as nodes become very much these off-the-shelf type products, both hardware and software, what can we do to retain some of that don't trust, verify ethos that Bitcoin is known for, and not solely rely on third parties?
Okay, so look, our principle as a company is absolutely can't be evil. Okay, Google did the whole "don't be evil" thing. We don't promote this. That's not actually our slogan. It's our internal operating principle. We are designing our own systems in order to make ourselves irrelevant. That is a very dangerous thing to do as a company, is to, essentially train away your own importance, to build away your own importance. However, we know that in doing that, we will remain important because we have integrity, and people will seek our advice, and they'll want to donate to the project by purchasing our products, and we can build community. And find ways to make money there. Maybe not as much as Apple ever made, but we will be just fine. But our goal is to make ourselves irrelevant, absolutely. And we think about this in every single design decision that we make, technological design decision. For instance, when you want to shop for services, right? If you want to shop for a messaging app or a password manager or a file, server, whatever it is, whatever you want to run on your own server, you are today, by default, shopping on our marketplace, the Start9 Embassy marketplace. Okay, you are literally browsing, just like you would on the App Store or Google Play Store, browsing services on a marketplace that is hosted by us. And you click download, and that binary is coming from us. Okay, there is signature verification, etc., but it is still coming from us, which makes us a central point of failure and trust. Okay, trust to an extent. Less trust, more failure. Okay, like it can be turned off, it can be backdoored, et cetera, at some point. So from the very get-go, we built into Embassy OS the ability of any old user in a very easy way to shop somewhere else, right? To switch the marketplace in which they want to shop. So instead of shopping at the Start9 Embassy marketplace, you switch over and you shop at some marketplace that's hosted on a Tor v3 hidden service that your friend in another country runs and hosts binaries on. And so that way, Start9, while we are the default marketplace and we, will gate it, as in we're not going to put crappy stuff on our marketplace, right? We're going to vet and verify services that go on there. We're going to make sure that the user experience behind them is good and they're things that we think people should run and they're not malware. But if you disagree with our decision and you think that we rejected your service and that people are definitely going to want to run it, then put it on the community marketplace, right? Go put it on the marketplace that's not Start9 stamped and approved, and anyone on earth can go download it and they can verify the signatures that were used to sign those binaries as well. That feature, by the way, I want this small disclaimer, is not in the current version, but it's coming in the next version of Embassy OS, is the ability to actually add trusted keys to your Embassy, public keys, such that the operating system will only allow services that are signed by developers who possess the corresponding private keys to be installed onto your system, which means you can switch from marketplace to marketplace and still feel secure that you are downloading software that is signed by somebody that you trust. And by the way, this is a dramatic, huge, stark difference from any other product that's out there. which are entirely sort of bundled, static, trusted approaches to the software.
Perfect. And to bring it all under a nice little bow, if you were to think about Node running and its potential in the future, the next decade, what final thoughts do you have on the topic?
Man, like I said, I think moving everything towards that type of architecture is where I want to go. And I think the actual true metaverse will be in an architecture that is like that. I think about it from the standpoint of like Minecraft, where a lot of kids are running their own servers and people who are really technical have their own games on their own servers, their own worlds and all of that. I think we're going to move to that type of environment, but also the data that is being moved around will be in a different service, I believe, and you'll take that data with you as an identity into these different worlds. And I feel like, of course, the underlying monetary system will be Bitcoin, right? That will be the thing that everyone moves from world to world with, and you'll be able to create these worlds. And I think that is extremely powerful. And that's why I started building something before I got a little bit ill, on top of Lightning, trying to build those types of things out. Because like Matt said, those are like people who build like me building that on top. I'm not going to say I'm poor. Like, I'm not going to say that. But as far as like building it with no support, not a lot of people like putting money in, it's just me building because I have an ideology about decentralization. And I think there are a lot of more people that are going to come out of the woodwork. And shout out to the cats that are helping me do some of that stuff as well, that are about that same mentality. So I can't wait to see what the future looks like, man. I'm all about empowerment, period. Like, I'm not about this centralized power and this authority. I used to get kicked out in the hallway every day in school. So I've been on this, been on this path of empowering the individual, man. So I can't wait to see what the future holds.
Yep. So for me, my current goal is to facilitate, lower the barrier to entry for people to take back control over their data and communications channels. And the way that we do that is by leveraging some pretty cool advanced cryptographic, and internet overlay networks such as Tor and public key cryptography and open source self-hosted services that are designed to run on federated and P2P networks. That's kind of how we accomplish this goal of giving people back sovereignty over their personal computing lives. However, as that becomes more and more, as that proliferates, it will become a target. It will be frowned upon. It will be attacked. And the final and biggest way that a decentralized computing system will be attacked, the final boss of this battle, are the ISPs. They control the pipes. They control the access points and they control the pipes. And the only way to get around the ISPs is through, some built already and some still needing to be built, advanced mesh networking technologies. Okay. We need to build an internet from the ground up, not from the top down, where devices in homes are actually meshing together and then using, larger antennas, leaping across neighborhoods and then building until you have one global net that is run by billions of individual sovereign nodes. And that has been a vision for a while. I didn't just make that up. But the strategy for accomplishing that vision has never fully made sense. There's been a lot of efforts to do this, but it needs to be incentivized, right? There needs to be personal, selfish incentive to set these things up. It can't just be like, come on, let's all do this and build a better world. And so our server approach, personal server approach, which is kind of a Trojan horse for a new internet using mesh networking, is a strategy that we think can work over the course of potentially a couple of decades, but we'll see how long it takes. And then the second piece of this, and I know we're out of time here, but I want to at least put this in there. For a lot of people in this world, the red line of surveillance and centralized custodial computing models is not Google's reading my emails and Facebook's monitoring my messages. People don't like that, but that's not actually their red line. The red line for most people is Alexa is listening, right? Google doorbell is watching. It's these devices, these Internet of Things, internet connected devices that are becoming more and more common in our homes, in our cars, in our places of work, that are all taking real sensory data and feeding it to the mothership. And as these things become more and more capable, it's not just a surveillance consideration, it's actually an action consideration. For example, let's say your locks on your home are internet connected and managed by Google on a monthly subscription for $5. You can lock the doors of your home from your cell phone. Well, so can Google. Okay. That brings a whole new meaning to the word lockdown. It's like your door can lock, okay, without your permission or control. And it is a very dangerous, dark future that we are facing. And so the only alternative to that, because I want the robot future, I want smart door locks. I really do. Okay. I just want them to be 100% totally under my sovereign control. And the only way that that can happen is if those door locks, instead of feeding data to the mothership and receiving data from the mothership, are feeding and receiving data from my personal server network that I personally control. That's what we would like to see happen.
That's the rebellion. Don't send these signals to the Death Star. That's what he's saying.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you, gentlemen.
I love it.
And this concludes day one of Keyfest 2022. Thank you so much, Lamar and Matt, for joining us. And thank you for all of you in the audience for listening in and being a part of this moment in history. And as we like to say here at Casa, don't trust, verify. But I'll go ahead and tell you so you can trust me that we will continue some of these discussions tomorrow on day 2 and day 3. Next session will be Lightning Network and privacy. So hopefully we see you then. In the meantime, take care and thank you.
Thanks, John. See you, Lamar.
Yeah. Live, love, life, everybody. Later.